We love food. We all eat food. Food is yummy. However, do we think about the relationship we have to food, or the relationship of food to the world at large and our society? Current LA Food was a public art triennial that looked at art and looked at food. And it was an opportunity to look at the multiple dimensions of food through the perspective of artists. Artists are really good at stepping back and looking at what's happening, and then representing these ideas in new ways. The artists were given the theme of the triennial, which was food, and harnessed the topic in amazing ways with art projects all over the city. 15 artists, 15 public programmers doing work in 15 parks in 15 council districts. So it was fast and exciting and a way to experience food differently throughout the city.
Funding for current LA Food was made possible by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. Artbound is made possible in part by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, an award from the National Endowment for the Arts on the web at arts.gov, and the California Arts Council.
We live in a great city that is an incredibly rich and diverse culinary site. It's an international city with so many cuisines. But there's so much to food. Food is pleasure and it's peril. It can be delicious and it can be dangerous. It is something that has those polar tensions. We have an enormous amount of food insecurity for a population that is experiencing homelessness. We talk about going green and fixing the environmental crisis, and yet we have an enormous amount of food waste going on. What kind of food are we going to eat when the big one hits? How often do we think about our relationship to food or food's relation to the world around us? These are things that we tend not to think about. So artists are really good at stepping back and looking at what's happening and then representing these ideas in new ways to inform us, to inspire us, and to call us to action. So what happens when you throw out the topic of food to a group of artists? What are the ideas around food, the issues around food, the wonders of food, the controversies of food? And in the case of Emily Marchand, she's looking at the existence of our homeless neighbors and how they are suffering from food insecurity and hunger.
In my own practice, I work with ideas around survival ideology, agriculture, food scarcity, food accessibility, and I felt like I couldn't approach this topic without thinking about the city I live in and the homeless epidemic that is going on here.
Okay.
You take one. How many is that?
Oh.
I think maybe one.
Okay.
We are going to be doing lunch packing for 1,000 lunches for the local homeless community, followed by a picnic that will be done on an 8,000 square foot textile that I am creating right now. Instead of trying to solve a problem, I'm trying to bring light to something that is very crucial and very important and very human. And so I feel like for me, rather than thinking on this huge scale, it's become very focused, which is a really big learning experience for me of just like, if you work small and you get all these people together, that you can start to plant this seed for bringing different ideas into different communities to help everybody out.
So public art takes many forms. We think about public art often as perhaps a sculpture in a park. It's very static. But today, public art is dimensional. Toralab is a collective of artists based in Tijuana, Mexico, and they were invited to do their project in Watts at Ted Watkins Park. Being unfamiliar with the neighborhood, they got into their mode of research and started to speak with many stakeholders and community members. And being in a park was also of particular thrust for them because they looked at the culture of a public park in Los Angeles and the barbecue. Toralab is reimagining the barbecue experience and is creating a pop-up installation each time they do an event. And their project's called the Watts Cookbook. Watts is this community of mixed demographics. And historically, it has faced issues commonly associated with low-income communities. It has a history of social unrest, a struggle for racial justice, and that results in a lack of resources, public services, and affordable access to healthy foods. Watts is one area of Los Angeles that's considered a food desert. However, there's an incredible resiliency found in Watts that despite its history of social unrest, its struggle for racial justice, and lack of resources, there is an incredible spirit.
Okay. Así va, tal cual.
Today, it's the Watts Cookbook Fire Up and Workshop. It's basically the culmination of a process in which we engage the community. So the result of what we're eating today is part of this cookbook. These cookbooks are not only the memories and part of a document, but it's part of what this community is. It's a portrait. It is the way people live. And it's through the recipes and their flavors in which we have built what we're cooking today. Now, when we have the cookbook as a printed thing, the first part will be this health of our bodies and the body of the city, in terms of the relationship of the way that we give nutrients to our bodies, from an emotional sense to the particulars of these vitamins and minerals, and how that looks in a map, to the recipes, and who each individual is who has given us a recipe. And the last part is what are we gonna propose? What is going to be left behind? No, so this is not something that just came as an occurrence, as a happening, especially in a place like this. And a place like this, I mean, with all the complexities, the ethnographical, socioeconomical, that South LA has. It is a conversation between the interpretation that we have right now of what we're doing and the recipes themselves that we have gathered. With all of the information that we have, with all of the neighbors, organizations, people who have entrusted us with the confidence of their life stories, it is a very important document. In the hands of a smart city planner or city maker, they could envision how this could be better. In the meanwhile, we will try to envision that ourselves, continuing this type of engagements.
When I think of Leimert Park, I think of a vibrancy of one of the oldest neighborhoods in our city. It's this incredible neighborhood filled with resiliency and creative culture. So how do you integrate public art in a place that is already very public and might already have a lot of art and culture going on, you do it very carefully.
So the piece that is in the park, it's a jack totem, it's called, and it's a play on words. It's made out of car jacks and truck jacks, but it's also a dialogue with sort of other narrative within the piece, which is Jack and the Beanstalk. My interpretation of it is the idea of sort of overcoming your fear and succeeding, you know, but also kind of having a dream that maybe other people might not necessarily be as convinced about, but your conviction to push forward and climb. So the entire sculpture is actually kind of made with room service. There are covers, these kind of warmers, these silver warmers, as well as bootlaces. And the bootlaces for me is a material I use in my work a lot. It's a kind of metaphor for movement. It's also, within this piece, it's a reference to sort of the adage, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which is a kind of misnomer in a sense, because it's impossible to do that. You kind of need help. You need a community, you need support. The really important component of that, in addition to the warmers, are the rebars. In a lot of cultures, in the culture I grew up in Jamaica, rebar sticking out of the homes sort of as a reference to the idea of progress, in fact, or the potential that can happen for building another floor, for moving forward. This is my first time getting the experience in Leimert Park. I live in Harlem, in New York, and so I remember Ben Caldwell saying that Leimert Park is like the Harlem of LA, and I didn't know what he meant. But I think being here, I realized that it's a Black community, very rich cultural roots, and the community, for me, was special in that respect. Coming from Harlem and seeing Harlem change, and I think they're figuring out what change might mean for them. Leimert Park, you know, there's a new subway line coming in, and a lot of talk about gentrification. And so they're trying to figure that out. And I'm intrigued with how that's moving forward.
It would be really hard to talk about food without referencing culture, especially in Los Angeles. The food is from so many people bringing their recipes, bringing their flavors, their spices, their ideas, their mixes, and it all comes from somewhere. Julio and Max are very interested in where food comes from and historically where food comes from. Their whole project is developed through the idea of home, you know, the duality. There's home, your homeland, and then home, your new home.
Our project is called New Shores.
It's a dialogue between two homelands, and it's based on the first chapter of The Orange Tree, written by Carlos Fuentes. That chapter talks about being of two shores, you know, two homelands, two cultures, two religions, two languages, and you don't feel like you belong to either one, but you belong to both of them in that struggle.
So through food, we're looking at how do immigrants contribute to the cuisine of the United States? What kind of food did they leave behind? What kind of food did they have in gatherings? What kind of food do they not find in Los Angeles? And essentially, we are looking at the impact of being an immigrant in the United States.
And so we're looking at this as one shore is in the past, one shore is current, where you are at, and then we're looking, for the first time with our projects, we're looking at the shore that's in the future, and like how the food and culture transform based on what's happening with the environment.
We are really interested in the power and the ability of food to actually create a dialogue. So I think one of the aspects of this project is for people to walk away with a knowledge, or at least an inquiry. They might be interested in exploring a bit more, whether that's issues of migration or issues of sustainability with the food that we're serving.
You know, we don't have to be right, but we want to at least start that discussion
So you have some artists thinking about the future of food through cultural migration, and then you have other artists who are thinking about what will it taste like in a whole different way, involving science and biology and technology, and where the kitchen is even going to change.
Something that I find personally compelling is, making art that's useful, something that is productive, thinking of like what are the resources that go into the artwork and what does it produce. Of course, it produces like dialogue, right? Everybody talks about that, but it could also be productive in a concrete way. So it's not the kind of artwork that, sits on a wall, but something that's a little bit more part of people's lives, that gives them nutrition, provides something that's needed and essential. And in doing that, kind of cuts away some of the waste that exists in the food system as it is. And that's what this kind of bioreactor facility is doing. Non-Food is a company that I co-founded. We specialize in algae-based foods, and the reason we focus on algae is because it has a really, really low resource footprint. Essentially, it's the first photosynthetic organism, so it's the first organism to take light energy from the sun and convert it into food. It's evolved to be very, very efficient at growing really fast. So potentially you can make the same amount of food with just 1% of the resources. So 1% of the land and water, and 1% of the CO2 emissions of other plant-based foods like corn and soy and other common crops. So we're going to fill up those columns with water and have algae growing in it so you can eat algae.
And so it's a very beautiful and intriguing architectural installation that will bring you in and sort of teach you about this way of making food, but also reflecting on our situation and why we have to think this way about food. Ry Rocklin's practice has an uncanny ability to bring us to things we love in popular culture, and one of those things we love is junk food, or popular foods that he then turns into powerful foods.
This past couple of years, I've been working on a project called Food Group, a cast of characters, giant food costumes made small again. And this further evolution of the Food Group project, which is to me such a natural evolution, is to have these Food Group costumes performed in public.
So when we watch one of these Food Group performances, we're attracted, of course, by the musical. And yet there's a side of it that is sort of saying, we're obsessed with this. And perhaps there should be some warning labels around this obsession.
Have a quick spritzer. So, yeah, you guys all in position, and then, yeah, let's just start from the top. All right, here we go.
Food group, we are food for the soul. Food group, you are under control.
The foods I've chosen and rendered in costumes are all quite heavy, literally. But then I was thinking more figuratively about the heaviness of these foods upon the earth, the kind of intense power and energy that's needed to create these foods, the cows in the pastures, the mass production and shipment of buns from wheat fields as big as the state of Idaho, I don't know. So there's a kind of tremendous weight in the production of this food. They're incredibly powerful foods, they're incredibly dangerous foods, but they're also so much fun.
Cha, cha, cha.
We're surrounded by processed foods, common everyday snack foods, junk foods, whatever you want to call it. And where one artist is playfully talking about how we're obsessed with these powerful foods, you have another artist sort of looks at that power in a different way, the way these junk foods are sort of ominous to our health and to society at large.
I'm from South Central, born in Compton, and then I moved over to South Central, specifically the neighborhood of Watts. And I can pin down 3 events that kind of led me to create this work. One of them was traveling and commuting back and forth from Santa Clarita to South Central and witnessing that food disparity and that divide between the access that my community has to healthier and organic foods. The other was being hospitalized at age 12. I had emergency appendicitis and ovarian cysts that they found by surprise. So that was the surgery that came about from eating a lot of Flaming Hots. And then the third stemmed from pretty much watching my youngest sister struggle with issues of obesity. So my process kind of began working with her and using our diets as a way to make work. When I was in middle school, eating Flaming Hot Cheetos was the lifestyle for my friends and I. We would have it for breakfast, lunch, dinner. This was all the time. We can kill one of the largest bags and eat that throughout the day. I use it because of the experience I've had with them, but not only that, it also, I'm using them to talk about Red 40, Yellow 6, and all of the dyes that are put into all of these processed foods that are marketed essentially to our communities. Red 40, Yellow 6, Blue 1, and all of these other colors are universal additives that are put into processed foods. So essentially, they lead to hyperactivity in children, are considered carcinogens, and pretty much are, aid to deteriorate your health. So they're really bad for you.
Her installation makes reference to the history of minimalist sculpture or minimalist form. But what's really interesting is that she's inserted a tension between something that is minimalist with something that's mass-produced or mass-consumed, like Flaming Hot Cheetos. And so that juxtaposition makes it accessible and also contemplative.
We're around an area that has a lot of convenience stores and liquor stores and pretty much sell a lot of processed foods. And other areas in Los Angeles are actually considered food oases, which means they have an abundance of healthier foods. So it's kind of pointing out those disparities. I definitely want people who come by and visit the piece to walk away with knowledge of what a food desert is, what areas are considered food deserts in South LA, but not only here, but in different areas around the world.
So we have these projects in neighborhoods that have been called food deserts. But Toro Lab is proving through their research and their digging that they can find a wellspring of information about how food is made and how it has been made throughout history in the community.
I don't know if we have over almost 300 recipes right now. Everybody who comes either makes the commitment or just give us a recipe. And maybe it's the recipe of their life, or maybe the recipe of their brother, or maybe it's something that they wish to eat, or maybe something that had been passed through generations from the African-American people who came from Louisiana at the very beginning, or the people who came from Latin America. And that shift can be looked at through the flavors of these recipes, right? So in essence, the construction of this cookbook is also part of what this landscape is.
Oh, and also the lady right there has also done one. I haven't given her one. Yeah. Okay. Welcome.
That one, look, it's giving you yours. That's for him. I'm sorry, this is chicken.
This is chicken over here.
I'm Diego Becerra. I'm a chef in 2 restaurants in Sinaloa, Mexico. When Raul and Toro Lab does events that involve food, I go into helping with the research and develop recipes.
Hi.
This event was trying to bring together a community. We started thinking of what to serve. Since there's so many different cultures and backgrounds in this area, we had to figure out a way to have something that was going to appeal to everyone. There's a dish in my state that's called frijol con hueso, which means beans with bone. But I made my own version here with short rib and beans that I could get here, and it turned out a great soup.
Where's Happy Face?
Happy Face, where's the Happy Face?
The recipe of the bean and bone wat soup, which in essence has certain flavors of Louisiana, of Sinaloa, of Sonora, of Latin America, and it's a unique plate.
Like they used to say in the Western movies, it sticks to your ribs. That's a kind of feeling I think this soup can get you. And the cool thing is this recipe was made here in Watts.
¿Qué le hicieron? ¿Qué le pusieron? Dígame para el secreto.
Costita de res, costita de tocinito.
What Emily has done with her piece, 1,000 Lunches, is create this 8,000 square foot quilt. 8,000 square feet. It's enormous.
It's hard to keep track of it. But the red, white helps.
Yeah, like, we're really glad there's a color.
The blanket is 1,400 yards of 100% cotton, and the pigments have been sourced from natural materials.
Sam, you want to pull yours corner to corner, and then...
There's hibiscus, turmeric, cabbage, onion peels, indigo, and I have basically mapped out my design based on different symbols in nature or survival tools. There's like a butterfly shape, there's a sun, there's raindrops, there's blood drops. When I do a lot of my work, I range from looking at hieroglyphics and cave drawings to clip art on the internet, because both of those spectrums look at symbols that have been distilled into the most recognizable form to communicate information. So each of the pigments are cut into one of the shapes, and each of those shapes are a pocket. And in each of those pockets are seeds. At the end of the day, everyone will join me on the picnic, and then we will all cut it up and people can plant it in their own pot, yard, public land space. And so that's what I decided to do with this quilt that's going to exist for one day. You know, there's a little bit of anxiety or sadness that you're working super hard, that this thing that is just gonna be destroyed, but I'm actually looking at it on the opposite end of, you know, where it's like gonna go out and keep living in different ways.
Shanna Lutker has big concerns about our environment and the way we can change our behavior in terms of having that change for the better happen, and really engaging the community in the awareness of how much waste we generate.
We're standing in front of the Contemporary Museum of Temporary Containers. What it is a collection of over 1,300 single-use food and drink containers that I collected over the summer with the help of the community of the Valley Plaza Recreation Center. And once we had amassed the collection, we decided to sort it by the material that it was made of and its shape and size, using the plastic codes that are on the bottom of the containers, and also by aluminum, by paper. And in those different categories, each one was assigned a color. And so as you walk past the collection, the color shifts in order to signify a different section of containers. I really wanted to work with the community here and make a project that was hopefully open to them, and it is in fact a portrait of them. It is their trash, it's their containers, and I think that they see it in a way that's different from how I see it, because these containers look different than my containers, so it kind of reflects this community in a way, even more than I had imagined. I used this project as a way to learn about recycling because it was something that I was curious about. And I am by no means an expert now. I'm more perplexed than I was when I began. I mean, recycling in Los Angeles right now is an unknown. We don't really know what's going on. And I didn't really think that I would get to the bottom of that. This is not an investigation, but it's a way to foreground that question and sort of ask, what's going to happen to these containers? And some will go to recycling afterwards, some will go to the garbage, but they're all waste, and it's all our problem we have to deal with.
In Jamaica, where I was born, a lot of people don't have opportunities, so they try to make their own opportunities. And it's quite often you'll see people build their own carts and sell anything from mangoes to Coca-Cola. When I came here and saw, it just so happened that particular day that I was visiting, there was a food truck festival. And I was really excited to see the community coming out and supporting, and the energy around it. And Enchanted Server is really this idea of, it's not a servitude, it's kind of magical correlation to working within the neighborhood, serving your community. So it's more about your role within the community and serving as something magical, something beneficial. Within the piece, there's a kind of a companion piece to it, which is the photo booth, where there are cooking utensils that are also enmeshed and wrapped and weaved with bootlaces. And I'm asking people to get photographed with these.
Right there. Yeah, right there, cool. And then bring this right there.
So they're cooking utensils, and they're wrapped to make them ambiguous, make them mysterious, and also give them another element of expectation and labor.
A few more, getting there.
So when you hold them, the idea is you get to imagine what they can become or what they are. So it's really a space of freeing the imagination and creating play for the viewer to sort of project another image of themselves into the world. I think when they pick it up, they're a little anxious. They don't know what to do with it. And then they start seeing that it's somewhat familiar. And so when they go into play mode, it's really fun to see what comes out of that. You know, as a sculptor, you always want to transform something. And for me, this table settings area is really about this idea of transformation. And ultimately, the subtext to Jack and the Beanstalk, subtext to the entire Enchanted Servers project is about transformation, right? Economic transformation, or transformation from one kinds of expectation to the next.
That one in front again? You all right?
Okay. They're called walkabout food costumes. So they turn your entire body into the thing. And so with them, there's this sense of scale where it's giant.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay.
To me, there's something about food in this project. Obviously, it's the thing that it's leading with, But I think in some ways this project is interested in almost retiring these foods from being foods and promoting them into becoming pure icon.
So, are you guys ready?
Let's do this.
So my performance is gonna start at Palms Recreation Center with a set of picnic blankets laid out on the lawn where people will come sit. There'll be binoculars there on the picnic blankets to see the food groups enter the park from far away. So these food group costumes with people inside will be walking through the park as if it were a giant body. So they'll be entering through the mouth, a bridge over there on the south end of the park, and then meandering through the park, and then we'll assemble in front of an audience and we'll sing songs and talk about their origins.
I'm working with a local organization called MEND. Stands for Meet Each Need with Dignity. They have many resources for the local homeless community.
That is a serious dolly. We brought our little baby dollies.
So food gets donated to MEND, and then they distribute it to the community.
I brought 2 pallets of water, 12 boxes of pears, 12 boxes of oranges.
Sweet.
And then a whole pallet of chips.
That's perfect, thank you. So I took those ideas of what they're getting. So a lot of it is shelf stable because people are on the move. And so we've created these lunch packs that are granola bars, fresh fruit, chips, nuts, dried fruit, and have assembled those into these lunch packs.
Emily Marchand has a mission in her project where she's asking people to get involved in simple ways, and through that experience, one can duplicate it and then create more impact.
I didn't expect everyone to finish so fast. Yeah, I didn't expect us all to blaze through 1,000 lunches.
We did 1,000. You guys packed?
Yeah, minus a few bags that were
under an hour.
Yeah. It's a very efficient crew here. One of my goals was to bring different private and public organizations together to see how they can overlap in the future. And to do that through art is pretty exciting.
So how did you two get connected? Did you approach MEND? Did you just?
Yeah.
So the councilwoman actually connected you.
Once I came up to Pacoima, and I learned a lot about the community up here, and there's a lot of need, but there's a lot of things going on.
MEND recovered last year in 2018 3.5 million pounds of food. We distributed 2.6 million pounds, not only at MEND, but through a lot of other partners in the communities.
How many people?
100 to 150 come every Tuesday, and it's generally often the same group.
Well, it also really goes back to your work. Yeah. I mean, your work is about stitching and knitting together. It is about kind of sustainable practices. So many artists have come into the world thinking that so much of their work is about reflecting a mirror. And I think what's really interesting in today's kind of contemporary art, social practice realm is that there really is this commitment to engaging community practice but from a very conceptual and deeply rigorous practice.
Yeah.
I was trying to not just build a sculpture in a park. I was trying to challenge myself to unite my sculpture and textile practice with the community engagement that I already do. And so by creating this textile and doing these lunches, I feel like we're bringing the community together to learn how to do this in smaller versions back in their own neighborhoods. One of the things that often happens is people don't realize how easy it is to organize. And so I'm trying to show how simple it is to gather resources and pitch in.
And that participation is incredible because we're talking about the quilt of society and who makes up our city. There are people who have security in food and people who don't. And Emily is bringing that to the front of mind in a beautiful way. Emily's project is not just symbolic. It actually took action, and took action by making not just a few lunches, but 1,000 lunches, and those lunches were immediately delivered to the homeless community.
MEND has been serving the San Fernando Valley since the early 1970s, and we now live in a 40,000 square foot building serving over 10,000 people directly every year. Today, they got to be the beneficiaries of the 1,000 lunches. Those 1,000 lunches are going to go to the 100 to 150 clients who come through our doors every Tuesday. And then also they'll be distributed to our outreach partners from the Antelope Valley all the way down to South LA.
Homeless tents in the shadows of tall buildings. Honest labor trapped in a box of little advance. Those once branded on buttocks and backs, now branded on minds, blindly seeking brands. New plantations, you dig? Digital chains, a multitude of voices united to rise up and challenge a small percent claiming ownership of Mama Earth and her resources. Countless Jack and the Beanstalks confronting the giant. The magic seeds within, a movement upward pushed and pulled upward by ancestors. Calluses and sweat and prayers, the enchanted server positioned to serve themselves. And they said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps when we had no boots.
Any community is very complicated, and I think one of the things that I realized that within Leimert Park, there are the people who I call the folks who are there all the time, and they feel a sense of ownership towards the park. And then there are the business owners who are in the neighborhood, and they feel a certain sense of ownership towards the park. And then there are the homeowners, and so they're not all the same. There's very different expectations and I think also regard for what that space might mean. So it's rich because they all come together in that space, but they all have conflicting notions of what progress might mean for that, for the park and for its history. So for me, it was navigating that and keeping my ego in check to make sure that everybody gets heard and just figure out how to be as inclusive as possible in the content and concept of the piece. That's why it goes from being very much about survival for the food truck vendors to make a living to a kind of poetics of the fairy tale and the absurd within a kind of artistic milieu.
Messages that babies carry into the world that we cannot decipher. The hidden burial ground of birds and ants, and the conductor of the ocean's waves, hidden baton, the fertile soil underneath the fingertips of homeless female saints, the applause of angels when the rain starts, the brain cells murdered by cell phones, false masters and true masters at a table set up at the crossroads converse in the language of fried fish from food trucks in the Mert Park. The canvas is stretched eternally in all directions. The clay of the earth at hand take the form of the wind and make an instrument that speaks in universal tongues about the wealth of our laughter. Here in this room of masters meditating on love.
While Max and Julio took on the complex and intriguing ideas of migration and the future through the lens of food, they really drew from the surrounding community and pulled from the voices of the many people across Los Angeles to shape their ideas of how to emphasize together, collectively, our varied experiences as Angelenos, so that everyone can share knowledge and prepare this incredible meal about the future and be prepared for what might be an uncertain future.
When you talk about the future, it's easy to go directly to technology. And I think as humans, we have a handle on technology, we're good at it. What we don't have a handle on is the moral and ethical and basically how we relate to each other with that powerful tool. And so that's what we're looking at here, is going back to how do we recover from a really horrible past and how can we heal? And what does that look like? Is it possible? How long is it going to take? How many generations? That's where we are looking at a new shore.
We're standing in an area that really has a rich history, and so we wanted to go back to really the book and explore this two shores, the idea of the two shores and being from two cultures at once. The conclusion is that we can't get to the future until we deal with our past. Before this was Barnstable Park, this was in Olive Grove. Before that was in Olive Grove, it was Mexico. Before it was Mexico, it was the founding indigenous here. And so essentially we thought, well, we should work towards the future, but with our thoughts in the past.
So we went back to the first people of this land. In this case, it's the Tongva. And that's why we're focusing on all the indigenous ingredients. And we also have invited indigenous speakers and musicians to perform tonight.
Meha, Oishkoneha, Ikwa'aha, Netswanya ne Kalekaviero. Said hello, I'm very happy that you were here. My name is Kelly. I am Tongva. I am an original person of this land, the Los Angeles Basin. To acknowledge the Tongva people, the original people of this land, is incredibly important to not only today, but in moving forward in a future that honors the land, the one earth that we have, the one thing that we cannot get back once we drive it to its death.
One of the things that when we were talking to one of the participants, Daniel French, he mentioned, well, you know, the future is also about land. Who has land? Who has access to water? Who has access to these items that basically make it a desert island or makes it sustainable for everyone.
As we think about how we've migrated wherever we're from, as we think about food and how we are related to the land, I wanted to share this song in Ganyengeja, in Mohawk. And what it says is, Te Wanarungwa Nyungwawana, Te Wanarungwa Nyungwarihoda. It says that we love our language and our culture. And it is so precious. We're all carrying our ancestors with us. We're all home. Wherever you are, wherever you're from, it's here. And your ancestors are here. They're all kicking it right now, eating food together. So if you don't speak Mohawk, that's dope. I'm still learning it. But think about where you come from and how your past and that story that you tell about that past is going to impact the future that you set in motion. And that's how it is. So here goes.
There is certain elements of who we are as human beings, that connects us to one another, because they're absolutely intrinsical to our instincts of survival. From housing to protection, to the way that we eat, to the way that we relate to each other and we speak. And food is one of those elements that put those things together. No, it's not only something that sustains us, it's something that connects us.
They wanted ungwa ne ungwa wana. They wanted ungwa ne ungwa hora ne aun ho juri ho na. Those keji e ne awane gai na ya heo.
If we understand through the recipes and the integral connection that we can have, you know, like these cognitive bridges in between memory and what we imagine, because it's not what we're eating, it's how we're eating, whom we're eating with, when we're eating, what we're eating. Because with that, you construct program. And with program, you construct from economy to public policies. It's a way to envision the way that we build our environments. So in essence, it's a way of understanding where we come from, where we are right now, but reimagining where we want to be.
They wanted ungwa ne ungwa wana. They wanted ungwa ne ungwa hora ne aun ha jori hoana. Dos keji e ne awa he gai na ya he.
And now, please put your palms together for Food Group's first ever whole food, the Ojai Pixie.
Oh, hi, pixie guy. Oh, hi, pixie guy. Oh, hey, pixie lady. Oh, hey, pixie lady.
Funding for current LA Food was made possible by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. Artbound is made possible in part by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, an award from the National Endowment for the Arts on the web at arts.gov, and the California Arts Council.